Because that is the big question. Like, I know you say the chicken, going back to the chicken and the egg.
Danielle Smith goes on the CBC. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got David Cochrane trying to twist the narrative here on the CBC. Danielle Smith dropping truth bombs. Cochrane trying to change the topic. We've also got another clip on CTV where a pundit living in La La Land thinks Mark Carney is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's another day in Canada. Let's jump into this. Got Kirk posting this one here. Canada's economy shrunk 1.6% in Q2 2025, but details of the numbers are much worse and more alarming. Goes on to talk about how the government's share and contribution to the GDP is growing while the private sector is shrinking, along with $80 billion leaving Canada this year by investors. Canada doesn't have a balanced budget, so pretending our economy is growing because of government spending, which in reality is building an extremely inefficient economy and one that borrows from its future while loading up a record bill for future generations to pay this off, is what's happening here. We can see that with his chart here. But do the Liberals care? Of course not. Justin Trudeau ran up deficits year after year after year. The budget will balance itself. Got this one here. Lost fortune on scrap metal. What do we got here from Blacklock's reporter? Department of Health scrapped half the costly world event ventilators it bought for under $1.1 billion. This has got to be one of the dumbest stories. So they bought 27,687 ventilators, taken on delivery, a total 14,187 were declared surplus. The extras were sold pennies on the dollar. It says here, these $22,000 ventilators each were sold for $6 a piece. Where was that fire sale? I'd pick up a couple myself and just leave it for later. And you can sell it on Facebook Marketplace. This is the kind of waste we're getting from the Liberal government. $22,000 ventilators getting dumped for $6 a piece. We've had a lot of talk of Danielle Smith now almost teaming up with Mark Carney. That's what the media wants to say. Just because she is waiting, she is hoping Mark Carney in his second tranche of major projects puts forward a pipeline. The media are trying to spin this. So I'll show you two clips here.
My meeting with the Prime Minister was about as encouraging as any meeting I've had with the federal government in a long time. I think he really understands the issues that we put on the table, and we're working through how to address them. I've talked about the grand bargain, and it really has three elements to it. I want to see, of course, a pipeline to the BC coast, the Pathways project, and also some of the bad laws that are impacting the investment climate. And so it's taking us a little bit of time to work through that, but we're making great progress.
So while Danielle Smith is optimistic, I think Mark Carney needs to get lost. It's very unlikely he builds a pipeline. And if he does, we know which companies are going to get that contract. Looking to his list here, it's going to be these ones. It's going to be ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Canadian Natural Resources, because he's invested in pipelines already. And to support those pipelines, I'm sure there'll be North River Midstream, which Brookfield owns, specializes in transportation and processing, the Interpipeline. It'll be one of these ones. But clearly he doesn't want a pipeline. It's probably because this big deal with Colonial Pipeline, does it hurt their profits? That's why Carney doesn't want another new pipeline in Canada. This all comes down to the Mark Carney show and his big grift here.
The problem is if you put a target in too soon. Remember what was happening? What was happening under the net zero power regs is they were telling anyone who wanted to invest today in a natural gas plant that if they weren't 95% abated on CO2 by 2035, that the executives would go to jail. That is currently how the law is written.
Right.
That is the reason why that's the reason no one is putting forward a natural gas power plant proposal, is because
you can hear David Cochrane desperately trying to interrupt her because, well, that makes it very clear why there isn't any proponents for a pipeline in Canada.
No board of directors and no CEO will take that risk.
Right. Well, we have talked about that before. I know there were criminal code violations in the legislation, but it had to do with like deliberate misleading and stuff, not if a best efforts failed. And anyway, I want to set that aside because at the time.
Let's just try to sweep that one under the rug. We don't want people to figure out what's really going on here.
We have. But like, I know the laws, you say, are the big obstacle here on the pipelines. There still is a lack of a proponent. There still is a lack of obvious, clear support from British Columbia to get to Tidewater. So the bargain, as it was described yesterday and laid out by the Prime Minister, was that pathways could be tied to a pipeline. Do you see as like no pathways, no pipeline, no pipeline, no pathways? Do you see them as completely interconnected and dependent, that one only happens with the other?
I think they're interconnected for sure. I mean, when you think about the proposal that they're talking about, it's a pretty substantial project. They're talking about $10 to $20 billion of investment. It's a whole lot easier to pay for that if you have a new revenue stream from a 1 million barrel per day bitumen pipeline that's generating $20 billion worth of revenue per year for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years. So yes, I think it makes perfect sense that we would talk about those two things together. Our industry, I'm so proud of them. They are constantly looking at ways for improvement. This is an industry that took a barrel of oil and found out how to make 6,000 products out of it. They are going to find some way to make some useful purpose out of CO2. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
And that's the real question here, is if there can be use for sucking the CO2 out of the air and turn that into a product, then by all means. But we don't have that right now. They're not making shirts out of CO2 pulled from the air. So right now we're wasting time, energy, and money on this. You have companies around the world pulling up oil and gas and selling it. We have so much of it and we're not doing it. But we're punishing ourselves despite Canada being so resource rich. It's absolutely ludicrous.
This is not inconsistent for us to support the industry in all of that innovation, so that we can achieve multiple objectives at the same time. Let's make sure that we get the revenue stream because we all need it, and then let's make sure that we're also investing in the innovation and technology.
You know, if there was a use for CO2 pulling it out, it would be a different question maybe, but that's not what's happening. And they're trying to force this on the industry, wrapping it in this environmental flag, when in reality, we're already net zero as a country. If they truly wanted to fight back against the emissions from this country, then they would buy water bombers, which are built in Alberta, to fight the forest fires. The forest fires produces the greatest amount of pollution every year when we have big fires that are raging out of control. If we had an army of 100 plus water bombers that just flew around the country and just put out all the fires, whether that's heli tankers or traditional water bombers, I'm wrapping them all in one term of water bomber. That would be the biggest way to fight this climate crisis in Canada. Not to mention what Pierre Poilievre said the other day, what he's been pushing all along about selling LNG, getting 20 LNG facilities and shipping it off to India and China and displacing their dirty coal. This is very simple. The Liberals are trying to trick people, and Liberal supporters, they're buying it hook, line, and sinker. They don't have critical thinking skills. They're easily brainwashed. I don't know what it is.
Finding a proponent, because that is the big question. Like, I know you say the chicken, going back to the chicken and the egg, as long as the laws are there won't be a proponent. But you and the Prime Minister and Minister Hodgson are signaling that there is flexibility possible here. And there was the acknowledgement that a pipeline is possible with pathways. So what does this mean for your quest for a proponent and the likelihood of where things are? Because I know you say you've been working on this, offering like a supply of oil and to be an anchor tenant and all of these things. Are you any closer to having someone who actually raise their hand, step forward and say, we will build this thing?
We won't until I think the Prime Minister and I are standing at a podium together saying, you know what, we fixed the bad laws. We're committed to a pipeline, and we're also committed to supporting pathways. As soon as I think the Prime Minister and I are in agreement, I have every expectation that that is going to make a big difference to those who make investment decisions. But we're not there yet. We're a lot of the way there, but we're not 100% of the way there. So we've got a lot of work to do over the next few weeks. But I had a very encouraging meeting yesterday. I think you've seen some of the reporting. So my interpretation of that meeting seems to be consistent with the Prime Minister's, and we're just going to keep on going until we can get that agreement.
So is this
So she's desperately trying to get some sort of deal for Alberta because she knows the separatist movement is growing there. Alberta treated like the black sheep of Canada, really the West treated like the black sheep of Canada. Everything goes to Quebec and Ontario. Despite the amount of tax dollars that come in from Alberta, it's preposterous.
halftime show at the Grey Cup. Do you think you can have this done by the CFL championship and have a proponent identified and ready to go, or could it take a little bit longer than that?
We'll wait and see. We're all working towards that. I think that the Prime Minister put that out as a target for a reason. He wants to get a sense of urgency. I can tell you my folks have the same sense of urgency that his does. And so I hope we've got a positive announcement before November 16th.
You can tell she knows that this isn't a sure thing. I'm guessing like 10% chance that some sort of oil deal gets made with Danielle Smith, Alberta, Pathways Project, all that bull crap. One thing we are seeing coming out of the summer is Tim Hodgson making another announcement here. They're not hiding from this anymore. They tried to hide that they're pushing for this green agenda. Pierre Poilievre nailed them on axe the tax. People were done with the carbon tax. They didn't want to use those words, carbon or any of those, the C word. But here he is again with another announcement. You can see right on the screen here, carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. They're not hiding from their true agenda anymore.
CCUS technologies will play an essential part in this transition. presenting a tremendous opportunity for clean growth, long-term competitiveness, and Canadian leadership on a global scale. This means not just producing the resources that our allies need, but producing them cleaner, smarter, and with lower emissions than our competitors. This will help secure a competitive advantage in new markets for our world-leading clean technology companies and create good-paying jobs.
No, it won't. That's not what it will do. What it will do is what journalist Dan Knight has posted here. Electricity prices in Canada just posted one of their sharpest spikes on record. According to Statistics Canada, the national electricity selling price index jumped 22% between July 2024 and July 2025. For ordinary Canadians, that means an average household power bill, roughly $1,800 a year, that has climbed to $2,200 per year. That's a $400 a year increase. Small businesses are being hit even harder. Users under 5,000 kilowatts, think family farms, restaurants, auto shops, saw costs soar 27% in a single year. That's thousands of dollars of added operation cost money they don't have. Wages didn't go up 22%, inflation didn't go up 22%, but hydro did. And this is happening while Mark Carney and Liberals bragging about climate competitiveness. In reality, their policies are making the basics of modern life unaffordable. This increase is directly from Mark Carney's carbon tax, clean fuel regulations. It's all this eco-green stuff that is jacking this up. We've seen it in the UK, we see it in Germany, and now we're seeing it in Canada. See this article here, German electricity prices highest in Europe, 70% above the European average, with Hungary as the lowest. And down here it has a price here, this is in euros, but $416.20 this electricity price per megawatt, including taxes. So Germany at $416. If you look at the bottom here, Hungary is 4 times the price. You also got this one here. It says New York Times and many others suggest that the more solar and wind, the cheaper the electricity. But that's not what the data shows. So what we're seeing here in this graph, 70% is the total percent of solar and wind electricity. Only Denmark has that much, 70% of their country. We look on the far left, we've got Russia, which is like 5%, and then a whole bunch of other countries here. Canada sitting here at 10%. On the left is the smoking gun here. You can see the price. So Denmark sitting at about 32 cents per kilowatt hour. You can see the direct correlation here. The more solar and wind electricity, in general, the price goes up. Russia doesn't have much. They got cheap electricity. We should have the cheapest electricity on earth. And a lot of people are going to argue that data centers are sucking up a lot of the power, and now we're having to compete with data centers and it's driving up the price. And I don't doubt that's happening too. But I mean, why would they be pushing electric vehicles then? That would be competing with all that too. Is there another play here to make a pile of cash off of electricity?
For Canadians, thank you for what you're doing. This is really important. This is what's going to drive prosperity in this country. That is why today we are excited to announce an important step forward. $5.8 million to support homegrown carbon management technology companies.
Homegrown carbon management technology companies. Dude, resign. It's time to resign, Tim Hodgson. We don't need an energy minister that is going to be pushing us down the most expensive path possible.
Right here in British Columbia. These investments are not just about technology and improving our carbon footprint. They are about building a cleaner, stronger, and more sovereign Canada for generations to come.
Canada is going to be done here at this rate. We need some serious change and we need it right now. Your government won't last a year. Canadians are done with this crap spending. Yeah, sounds like a total grift, and that Canadians will be on the hook to make politically connected friends very rich. Moving ahead here, we got a panel on CTV. Listen to what this lady in the top right has to say. You got to wonder how someone has so many screws loose that this is their opinion of what the state of our country is right now.
Sabrina, what do you think the Prime Minister does? Does he take the bait, or does he sort of, become the person who, as Melanie said, the old Dalton McGuinty? Because, something that I noticed of the Prime Minister, he's certainly more comfortable in public again. I mean, we have to look no further than, at that address to caucus where, I lost track with the number of sports references he used, and kind of how he was joking about the country being in trouble because Connor McDavid, the star forward for the Edmonton Oilers, hadn't been signed yet. So I wonder, will his team say to him, no, you got to keep this between the lines and keep focused and don't take any of the bait? Certainly they'll say don't take the bait, but what do we see from him? Somebody who will fight back, or somebody who tries to just be the Prime Minister and the adult in the room?
What they're basically talking about before this is when Carney squares off with Pierre Poilievre, is he going to be very bland and only talk to the speaker, not look Pierre in the eye and just try to not engage him? Or is he going to come out swinging like Justin Trudeau did? They had numerous sessions last year where it was just a big battle back and forth.
I think every signal that we've seen from Mark Carney so far since he began this journey is that he is the adult in the room. Not that he tries to be the adult in the room, not that he's looking to become that person. He is that person. I think he's commanded rooms very well. And I think, again, need not look further than his command of the premiers. And those
The command of the premiers. She's talking about the adult in the room. Let's not forget about what happened on election night when he won. This is the adult. The adult she's talking about.
FPT meetings to see how well he is doing on that.
Yeah, but it's different, Sabrina. Sorry, Sabrina. I know you're about to make a point, but it's very different because Pierre Poilievre is extremely good, whether you agree with him or not, at poking his opposition right in the eye and standing there and smiling about it.
This is why conservatives don't like mainstream media. That's not an accurate depiction. Pierre Poilievre comes with the facts and dishes them out straight and hard, and the Liberals don't like the facts. They like lying, cheating, and stealing. What happened to the SDTC documents? Are we going to get our hands on those?
But I think Pierre Poilievre, if he was going to pivot, if we were going to see Pierre Poilievre 2.0, we should have seen that on the campaign trail. We're still seeing today Pierre Poilievre 1.0, and we're still seeing the same messages as that he had a year ago. So, what I think that, at best, is he going to update the bumper sticker slogans to tell us, some new tax that we're going to ask or whatever it might be for updated for 2025. But the messaging hasn't changed, and the messaging is what's not resonating.
Yeah, it's because the Liberals aren't fixing the problems. What does this moron not understand? The carbon tax, the industrial carbon tax, the emissions cap, all of it is destroying our country. We should have multiple LNG facilities cranking out LNG around the world, making our country rich right now. We have one. We have one in the last 10 years. We could have 20 right now. Pierre keeps beating the same drum because these same problems aren't getting fixed and they're getting worse. And he's beating different drums now. He's had to add more drums to the band here because there's so many problems. That's why he's talking more about immigration now, more about the crime, because the crime is getting worse. He keeps offering solutions. The Liberals keep making things worse. But what reality does this lady live in, where she thinks Mark Carney and the Liberals are the greatest thing since sliced bread, when you have people's homes are being invaded by gangsters, goons, and goblins on a daily basis? There's literally 2 or 3 of them every single day. Home invasions, people getting pew-pewed, armed robberies. You got people driving into banks with backhoes and trucks going through jewelry store windows and then looting the place. In what world do people like her think, yeah, that's good, that's the kind of place I want to live in?
You can poke in the eye as much as you want, maybe on a personal basis, or try to needle nose your way in there. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a policy leg to stand on, what is it that you're bringing to the conversation? And what is it that people are taking away from that conversation besides toxicity? And people don't want that.
I can't believe this lady's employed. She's so stupid. Mark Carney didn't offer anything but Donald Trump is scary. Pierre Poilievre had a plethora of proposed projects, policies, and ideas. And of those, Mark Carney stole some. That's where Mark Carney gets his policies. It's like these Liberals only see exactly what they want to see, not reality. They don't live in reality.
And Najud, is the Prime Minister beating him to the punch with all these announcements? And we're also hearing that there could be something on housing coming before Monday. I mean, is he trying to basically take away any argument and any sort of shot that, Pierre Poilievre may try and lob his way across the aisle?
Well, certainly you can already hear the Prime Minister standing up in the House of Commons and referencing the launch of the Federal Projects Office and other announcements that have been made or are going to be made. But I think the challenge for Mr. Carney will be to not seem dismissive when he responds to Pierre Poilievre, because just in reference to the comment about him behaving like the adult in the room, there have been moments where he's had to respond to something Pierre Poilievre has said or called for, and sometimes it almost feels like he wasn't really clued into the fact that Pierre Poilievre had a press conference and made an announcement or went after the temporary foreign worker program or this or that. And so
this is very true. Mark Carney's not paying attention. His team's not briefing him, and he doesn't care. He's Mr. Elitist banker who only cares about himself. He doesn't even care to be briefed on what Poilievre's talking about because he doesn't respect him. He holds no value in his mind. But it makes Mark Carney look like an idiot and an arrogant jerk.
So while, I can understand the argument of being the adult in the room, there's also a danger of seeming like you don't understand or feel the concerns that are being raised by Pierre Poilievre, which you already know are going to be about the cost of living, going to be housing, things that are very touchy for people.
Mark Carney's going to come out with another announcement here talking about housing, and it's just going to be more of the same. He already announced ATCO, modular housing. housing, something that he can really make a lot of money off of, because that's all he's doing here. Mark Carney's a coward. He's useless. He's not over Canada. He's up for himself in Brookfield. Another Liberal news show. Pierre's going to totally destroy Carney. Yeah, sure hope so. In other news, we got a 64-year-old man who was loading groceries in his car when he was pokey-poked by a random stranger. Police arrested a man they say had a pattern of failing to comply with his release conditions. Uh-oh. This is Canada now, where you can just poke people with a sharp pokey and then just get to do it over and over and over again, when really these people should be in a dark pit and never see the light of day ever again.